Spanish rice, Mexican rice, arroz rojo are all names for the spectacular dish that reminds many of nostalgic childhood memories and others of delicious dishes soon to be enjoyed. Begin this Mexican staple by adding about 2 tablespoons of butter to a hot pan. Once our butter is mostly melted or all the way melted, we'll add 1/2 onion, about 3 to 4 cloves of garlic. At this stage, I also like to add a little bit of crushed chili flakes. Then we'll stir everything, incorporate all those flavors, get the butter mixed in with that garlic and onion. This is important. Allow the onion and the garlic to cook together. Releases these very important flavors that create the foundation of our dish. All right, now that our garlic and onion have been cooking together for a few minutes now, they've got some good color on the bottom, some browning. Color is flavor, so it's important to remember to take your time with this step. All right, now we've got 1.5 cups of rice here, adding that straight in. All right, at this stage, many would just add the water, the rest of the seasonings, call it good, put the lid on, rice done. But it's important to let the rice actually toast with the bottom of the pan for a minute. Our rice has been browning in the pan now for maybe 2 or 3 minutes on medium heat. Start to see little grains pop at the surface that have got little tinges of brown on the bottom. That's exactly what we're looking for. It's time to add the rest of our spices. So I'll grab a bowl here, which I have about 2 tablespoons chili powder, around 2 tablespoons cumin, salt, pepper, tomato paste. That just goes straight in. Get our spoon in here, really start to incorporate all of that. Maybe reduce the heat a little bit. You don't want to burn any of that rice. You can see all those colors in that rice mixture there. All right, so now I am adding water to this, although I'll recommend using chicken stock as it really enhances the flavor. Oh yeah, exactly what we're looking for. All right, now because I'm adding water and not chicken stock, a tip is to get some chicken bouillon cubes, chicken bouillon paste, either or work. Get about 1 tablespoon of that, all just depends on how much liquid you're adding. Just add that straight in there. Okay, now we can see that our liquid here is boiling nicely. Give it a couple more stirs, additional stirs. Make sure all that chicken bouillon is incorporated. There's no lumps or chunks of that lingering. Then we'll get our lid. Pop that on there. And that lid will not come off until the rice is fully cooked. Now I'll reduce the heat down to a 1 or low simmer. It'll keep that vigorous simmer going until all that water is gone. It's all absorbed into that rice, all those rich, delicious flavors. And soon, about 15-20 minutes of sitting, then our rice will be ready to be stirred and enjoyed. Okay, so now our rice has been sitting here for probably about 15 or 20 minutes now. Take this lid off. It's looking and smelling delicious. You can see before the stir, all the onion, all that colored seasoning from earlier. It's kind of drifted to the top. So what I like to do, just come over here, give it a good stir. This is a good time to check if all that liquid is officially absorbed. In this case it is. This is looking delicious. Keep stirring that up. And then it's not critical here, but once it's stirred, I do like to let it sit just for a minute. I feel like that just adds some firmness to the rice that it's lost if you serve right after the lid has been on it. But at this stage, you are done. Add it to whatever other dishes you like. Add a protein to it that is not authentic to true Mexican cuisine. That was added by Spain later on. But again, it's a delicious addition. And I hope you enjoy. Sitting down to eat some of this rice we made earlier. Reminds me of the occasions in which I had this meal growing up. A lot of the times it was on cold weekday nights. Just need to throw together a meal quick. Maybe had a protein to go along with it, maybe didn't, but it was delicious nonetheless. Again, it was my dad making this a lot of the time. It was just a staple for us. We had it every weekday night. He'd be helping us with homework and then going back and tending to this rice. Just reminds me of childhood and delicious with every bite. Spanish rice is a staple of Mexican cuisine. However, the key ingredient, rice, is not actually native to Mexico. The introduction of rice can be traced back to the 1500s when Spanish colonizers first took hold of Mexico. The Spanish had control of parts of Asia at this time, which gave them access to rice, and soon it became a crucial part of their diet, especially when non-perishable foods were needed for long sea voyages and things like that. Around the same time, the Spanish also laid claim to Cuba and had a significant influence on their culture, and culinary traditions. A quote from The Joy of Eating, Food and Identity in Contemporary Cuba, written by Christine Pomponet Cantat, sums this up nicely. Today, rice is Cuba's most important staple, perceived as versatile, durable, and filling. In times of scarcity, if rice and beans are stockpiled, Cubans do not fear hunger. During the harsher years of the Special Period, when rice was extremely scarce, Cuban women created a substitute out of cut spaghetti to preserve the illusion of serving rice at their tables. I feel this quote shows the sheer importance of rice in the Cuban culture. Instead of simply cooking spaghetti, they would create makeshift rice to preserve their culinary cooking practices. While rice is not native to Cuba or Mexico, chili peppers most definitely are, and are critical to Spanish rice. The Aztecs were the first group to experiment with chili peppers and soon cultivated many varieties of peppers that are still used today. The Walsh text discusses the Aztecs and their use of chili peppers, and I feel like this quote sums it up nicely. The Aztecs had developed a sophisticated cooking style and cultivated dozens of varieties of chili pepper, which is still strongly associated with the cuisine in much of Mexico and southwestern United States today, including well-known varieties such as Serrano and Poblano. Today, we see Spanish rice as a side of a more significant protein, such as beef or pork or chicken. This creates familiar dishes such as arroz con pollo. Interestingly, the addition of protein was not traditional until the rule of Spanish. Another quote from the Walsh text provides proof of this. The far more carnivorous Spanish were appalled by the paltry use of the animal flesh that characterized Mesoamerican cooking, and upon arrival they immediately introduced cattle, sheep, pigs into the region. This practice has stuck in Mexican culinary practices as well as those in the southwestern United States, who still incorporate proteins with this dish. Comparing Spanish and Mexican cuisine, there are many similarities, some of which Mexico has taken from Spain and vice versa. A poetic quote pulled from the Kurlansky text provides an example of this. There's always a suggestion of dried mint leaves, a glass of sherry, a hint of sabrosa española, a nuance of oregano, a bit of olives and olive oil, 2 or 3 chili pods, a stain of tomato, a reminder of minced onion, and the dead certainty of garlic. One or all in every Spanish dish. Many of these ingredients are used in Spanish rice, such as chili pods, tomato, onion, garlic, while some are excluded like mint leaves and olives. The current recipe for Spanish rice, although there are still many variations, is as follows. Rice, chili powder, fresh garlic, onion, cumin powder, tomato paste, butter or lard depending on what you have in hand, chili flakes, chicken stock, or water, again depending on what you have on hand, salt, and pepper. This has largely remained the same while the production and exportation of key ingredients have changed due to improved technologies and transportation. We can still see the individual additions made by the Spanish and Aztec people hundreds of years ago. Growing up, my dad always loved cooking and sharing his passion with my sister and I. Mexican rice was one of the first dishes he taught us how to cook. Now, all these years later, I also developed a love for cooking, and preparing this dish reminds me of my childhood. My sister and I have now moved out and we continue to make this dish regularly. I chose to interview my dad for this project, and he talked about first having the dish when he was around 9 or 10 years old. His mom would prepare it in a variety of proteins and other additions. And my dad, growing up in Tucson, Arizona, so much of his diet was influenced by Mexican tradition. In our interview, he talked about Mexican rice and how it takes him back to the Tucson days. Being raised on a diet of Mexican staples allows for other aspects of Mexican culture to become a part of your day-to-day, such as community. My dad talked about this dish, reminding him of that, which contributes to the nostalgia surrounding this dish within our family. In Mexican culture, this dish represents stability and tradition. In difficult times, most families still have access to rice and dried spices, so this dish was always a possibility. The recipe was also used in celebrations. Families would come together and enjoy a warm meal consisting of this rice and other Mexican foods, creating a welcoming and delicious environment of togetherness. Mexican rice not only represents history, but also the culture that has emerged from hundreds of years of adaptation and resilience. As I mentioned, the most significant and beautiful part of this dish is that it has largely remained the same after the introduction of key ingredients of Spain. Technology has played a role in the distribution of these key ingredients, and since its conception, other nations have taken hold of the recipe, such as the United States. However, the foundations of the recipe have largely remained the same. American cooks still use chili powder, tomato, cumin, and other Mexican spices simply because the flavors are so cohesive and simple. One of the major changes that can be identified, depending on the region, is the fat used to cook the rice and the onion and the garlic. Traditionally, lard was used. However, for health reasons and access reasons, some have switched to olive oil and or butter, just kind of depending on what they had at the moment. This creates a less traditional flavor, but is still delicious nonetheless.